how much money you have isn't the greatest indicator of your value. And having more money, rather than trying to hoard it or try to go risk it, what if you invest that into yourself? And what if you figure out your skill sets? And what if you find a way to get so abundant with it that you have enough to take care of yourself that you could actually share? The message here is important because what if we teach young, responsible people, and that responsibility leads to a more abundant world where they're actually able to help other people because they're not as entitled and not as dependent upon other people to take care of themselves. I've really been going and trying to train the financial industry because they use words that kind of go with this shortcut mindset, like cash flow hacks and financial hacks and financial shortcuts. A lot of people want to be influencers and paid to be influencers. Like my son's friends, the 15-year-old, they all think oh, because I have 80,000 subscribers on YouTube, that's where I make my money. I don't really make any money on YouTube. That's just where I release some content. But there's a certain addiction to fame and recognition without effort. And again, it's that shortcut mentality. It's a weird place where the young generation judge the old generation for being reckless, but they want to benefit from all of that recklessness. If it is recklessness, they've ruined the environment. I want to travel the world. Part of it is we've really I have a bunch of comedy bits on this. When you think about money and we put words that are adjectives to describe it, dirty, filthy, stinking, rich, it's kind of like dirty, filthy, stinking, you hear these kind of things in documentaries. And so we vilified it, having it somehow makes you bad or wrong, and yet people want more of it, so they're very confused, and that's the dilemma. I want more money, but I don't want to be bad. I want to take care of my family, but what if it's bad or I have to do things that are bad? And I just wrote a blog about how we have this whole notion that it's not personal, it's business, and that's what people say before they screw you over. And I'm like, why do we hide behind that? If someone says it's not personal, it's business, it means they're not going to honor their word and their money was more important than their word. And this is the example that they see out there. And it's reinforced in rap videos, it's reinforced in commercials, it's reinforced in Hollywood movies that money is power, that money is value. Yeah, money's your identity. And I mean, my kids listen to rap music and I happen to enjoy all the beats, but they always tease me because I'm like, do you hear the consciousness of these lyrics? And they're like, oh, they make fun of me, but I'm like, it really is this kind of words casting spells over people. And so I really think the message put in the book is so critical because it's like, hey, how much money you have isn't the greatest indicator of your value. And having more money, rather than trying to hoard it or try to go risk it, what if you invest that into yourself? And what if you figure out your skill sets? And what if you find a way to get so abundant with it that you have enough to take care of yourself that you could actually share? And I think, because that's where we get caught up in a lot of communistic tendencies in the world where we're like, hey, we want to make sure people are taken care of. And when they can't take care of themselves, we can't trust the wealthy to help them or even people that are making money. But I'm like, but what if you start learning from an early age, you take care of yourself, and rather than taking care of yourself and then thinking about the yacht as the next step, you think about what's fulfilling and what makes you feel connected to the world and where can you give other people opportunities and chances because you're giving back time and money because you've got things handled. But I think it's important that we handle our things ourselves before we start giving away too much, because there's other people that give away so much they put themselves and their family at risk before they've taken care of themselves, and they feel this guilt and shame, right, because of either their race or their family. They feel like they were born further ahead, and we don't always have to give money to help. I think it's harder for me to give of my time than to give of my money, but I think that the message here is important because what if we teach young, responsible people, and that responsibility leads to a more abundant world where they're actually able to help other people because they're not as entitled and not as dependent upon other people to take care of themselves because they've really invested in who they are. And I think that message of you are your greatest asset, and it's just really big on that page. I hope that every parent reads that. I hope every kid reads that and really believes that, because I think we've kind of been indoctrinated that if we just go through enough steps and go through enough schooling, get enough degrees, and then we're valuable, then we can get a higher salary. But what if it's not in what we want to do? What if it's not that valuable anymore? Now, what if we have $250,000 in loans and we feel trapped in a career that we hate? And that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they get into a lot of debt and now they're in a career they don't like and they feel like they have to stay there to provide for their family, and then they just feel stuck. It drains their energy and they just can't wait to retire. I want kids to build a life they don't want to retire from. But I wonder how many people ever get to a place maybe I was just more fickle, but for a long time I really thought money would make me happier in a substantial way. And the times I'm happiest is when I'm challenging myself with work that I've never done, like filming a comedy special and dedicating myself to that that, or taking my family on a trip and having us all of us together and connecting in the time when I had the most money coming in, but I felt like I was just, the money was coming in and I wasn't having to doing much for it. It was not that long ago. I was just like, yeah, this isn't that fulfilling. Like, it's nice, and I feel like I've recovered from like 90% of that, but there's still 10% of the time that I have friends that, like, I get this little tinge of jealousy and I have to be like, okay, I'm gonna let that go. What's that about? Where am I feeling insecure? Where did I get hurt as a child and I didn't resolve it? Like, but at least I recognize it. Like in my 20s, I would just be like, that's fuel for motivation. I'm out. And like, I hear so many speakers like, I will outwork you. I will do whatever it takes. I'm like, do whatever it takes mean I'll neglect my family. I'll neglect my health. I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna beat this person that it doesn't even matter whether I win because I'm inventing the competition. Some of our so-called heroes in North America are some of the more miserable people that you'll ever meet. Like Michael Jordan is a miserable person. You hear his speeches, it's resentment. It was always a chip on. He's the best basketball player ever lived, and he's not happy. Like, so great. You've got stature and recognition, but how many relationships did he ruin along the way, and how much resentment and anger did he have to get there? Like, I think that, I think you could be extraordinary and be happy, but I do think there's some costs when it's when you get that linearly focused and everything else is secondary. And some people, money is that game for them. It's like all they want is more of it and to have more than anyone they know, and they're not always fun to be around because they're kind of exhausting. But like, part of legacy is you could build relationships and impact those relationships and be very giving in those relationships. And like, I sold my company, but I still have all the relationship capital, all the relationships I had. So I didn't get rid of that. I didn't lose that. And I have to remember that. And I still got all this ability that I learned along the way and creativity. And so having a concept come to life in a way that's fun and engaging for kids. First time I read it, I got teary-eyed because we talked for 38 minutes. She read one of my things and she came back with like a masterpiece. And so I read it in front of this group of financial advisors, got all emotional because I just felt like this nails it. If people could understand this, life gets so much better. Yeah, it was like cool because my literary agent is the one that shopped the book. And I think he found the perfect publisher. Like, they're awesome. Like, they were so good at combing through the book and finding an illustrator and seeing the vision of this and getting it out there, and like probably 7 times more books that she sold than I've sold. But I hit New York Times because there's a just certain thing that happens the way that books get distributed and all this kind of stuff. So now hopefully there's a chance that she can get that recognition because she deserves it. And that kind of piqued her interest a little bit when she's like, how did you hit that? So that started the conversation. The conversation before that was I was telling someone I was a comedian, and she's like, a comedian, but then looked me up and found that out. And then when she was a children's author, I was like, well, for a decade I've been wanting to write a children's book, but I've talked to a few children's authors and we didn't really hit it off. I think we knew by the end of the flight that we would be doing this together. Like, we didn't know for sure, but I was like, it felt right already. I was thinking I did something I'd never done before. I offered to do a free immersion. These things are $25,000 where I help people go from A to Z in their life and finances. And I agreed to travel to them, which I never do. Everybody comes to me, and I just happened to be in Costa Rica and told this guy that I would do that. And because I was there, one of my friends was flying to this little town in Nebraska. I was like, hey, let's go there, stay the night. I want to like introduce you to this guy that I work with. And this guy was pretty well known, so I flew there. And then I just flew home. I was like, if I didn't say yes to that, we would have never met. And that was me just kind of at first being like generous and then resentful of my generosity because it was right before a comedy tour. And it's just funny, all these things that have to take place. I'm calling someone I referred to. She overhears the conversation. We end up sitting close to each other. Like, there is so many things that had to happen for this book to come to the market. And when she says she's done 95% of the work here. The hardest thing about this book for me is I don't think anyone takes me serious when I say, oh, I wrote a children's book. Like, I have to be like, no, my co-author has sold 3 million plus copies of children's books. Like, because sometimes people say they've written things, but it's not in their category or not in their ability. And like, I think it's going to be awesome when they start reading it. And because 10 years ago, I went and bought children's books. Like, I was like, what are the children's books for money? And I have a few of them on my closet over here. And I was like, I read them and I was like, okay, but they weren't like classics. They weren't something that I wanted to read to my kids or I wanted to buy for people. I might be biased, but I'm just like, brought me to tears, like I said. And like, it's one thing to write financial books, it's another thing to write a kid's book. And I think from the perspective of money being the character, and my dad used to always tell me that we had a money tree, and there was a whole autumn where I was like, when is this thing gonna bloom? I really believed there was gonna be this money all over the tree. And then my mom said, I hope you're not that gullible, and I was, because I was hopeful. I just thought, And this thing's gonna, like, I was already making my list of what I could buy. I read it. I think that entertainment is the gateway to transformation. Like, millions of people want to be educated, but billions want to be entertained. And that's why I think a children's book's so important, because this is a ritual of parents reading with kids and the joy of that experience. And the fact that they'll read this from cover to cover and maybe read it again and again. I mean, I think of some of the books that we read to our kids that I probably still have memorized to this day. So that's really exciting to me. I think that we aren't good with money because money becomes so unfun. It's marital fights. It's scariness about the future. It's economic concerns on the news. And it's like so depressing that people just get intimidated by it. And money being this character that's fun and telling the story and has a bunch of friends that will come in the shorts. I mean, like that's going to be really cool to have. That's going to be like a different way to view this. And if we can start that friendly at an early age, what would happen to people? And if we get these seeds planted of saving and spending wisely, but then giving and investing in yourself, I love that message. And it's a message I want my grandkids to have. If my kids have kids, I joke too much saying rule number is 1, don't get married, just joking, because I'm actually 21 years happily married. But, like I'm so excited to share this book with people and give it to people. Like I'm proud of my other books. Like I've spoken at events with billionaires and I hand out my first book I ever wrote and I was 27 when I wrote it. But like, this is a book I would give in any situation, in any place, at any time, and just be so excited for whoever got that book to read it. Like, I don't care if it was in a coffee shop or if it was in a college or if it was like, because this is a type of book that I think really can plant seeds of hope in a family and give some relief, because parents don't know how to talk to their kids about this topic at all. It's so confusing for them. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from, so go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.